everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me one quick favor, see that little black subscribe button on the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Really does help this channel grow, my audience grow, and I appreciate it more than you know. Also, quick thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet $50 on any game. Get up to $1,111 in free bets courtesy of the Betfred Sportsbook. Thank you again. Now, here's the video that you came here for. You want to switch gears, and I want to talk about something very interesting that came out on Tuesday afternoon. So we are, of course, 72 or so hours removed now from what was just an unbelievable Saturday of college football. I think the highlight for just about everybody in terms of the action and the meaning and the impact and the this and the that, it was, of course, Texas going to Bryant-Denny Stadium and beating Alabama. Huge game, huge ramification, two mega brands. Texas may be the most despised brand in all of college football, and Nick Saban moves the needle good and bad. What was interesting, though, was when the TV ratings came out for that game, they were, as you would expect, very good. But what was especially interesting was that there was another game earlier on Saturday that essentially had the exact same TV ratings, and depending on what metrics you look like, actually outrated Alabama, Texas. It was a game that kicked off at 10 a.m. local time. It is a game featuring two teams that finished with losing records last year, two teams with first-year head coaches. I am, of course, talking about Colorado and Nebraska in the big noon window kickoff. And so we're going to get to numbers in a minute. But the fact that we are talking about a Colorado football game, Colorado, Nebraska, but we know nobody was watching for Matt Rule, respectfully, of course. A Colorado, Nebraska football game basically was on par, if not outrating Alabama, Texas. It just shows you what I have discussed since the day that Coach Prime got the job at Colorado. There is nobody like this guy in college football. And I'll be blunt, I am even shocked at just how big his impact is on this sport. First off, let's get into some raw numbers, okay? So Fox released its TV ratings earlier on Tuesday, and this is what they said about this game. 8.73 million viewers on Fox. First of all, for a noon kickoff, that is astronomical. That is insane. I remember when people thought Fox was crazy to put their biggest game at noon because people were out doing stuff. They don't come back until the late game. No. 8 million people, almost 9, 8.73 million people tuned into that game. Not in prime time, not featuring, the reigning national champs or whatever. It shows you just how many people were tuned in to see Coach Prime, and the records that it set according to Fox were astronomical. It was the most watched Pac-12 game that has ever been broadcast on Fox. More than any USC game, more than any Oregon game, more than any Washington game, UCLA, whatever. Nothing has compared to it. It was also, according to Fox, the most streamed game that they've ever had. So it was significantly more than 8.73 million that actually watched it. And it was also their 10th highest rated game of all time on Fox. We are talking about a network that broadcasts Michigan, Ohio State every year. We are talking about a network that had Alabama at Texas a year ago, regularly broadcast Texas games, regularly broadcast Oklahoma games, regularly broadcast Ohio State and Michigan games when they're not playing each other. And this was the 10th highest rated broadcast ever. Again, the highest rated ever for a Pac-12 game. That is unbelievable, especially when you look at the numbers compared to Alabama and Texas. Now, admittedly, what people would say, well, a lot of people, including myself, on Saturday did not have access to ESPN, and it was on ESPN, not ABC. I get all that good stuff. At the same time, just think about what we're talking about here. We're talking about Alabama hosting Texas. Now, according to ESPN, it was, I believe, a little bit under 8 million people that viewed on ESPN. Now, granted, there was the simulcast with Pat McAfee. There was streaming, and they said that overall it was about 8.8 million people that viewed the game, and that it peaked over 10 million viewers. So credit to ESPN. Listen, this isn't a knock on them, but the fact is, again, we are talking about comparing Colorado, Nebraska, two teams coming off losing seasons, new head coaches, with Alabama versus Texas. Alabama, the reigning kings of college football. I know that Georgia's better on the field the last couple of years. Other programs have maybe surpassed Alabama in terms of win-losses the last year or two. but they are probably one of the 2 or 3 biggest brands in the sport. And outside of Deion Sanders, Nick Saban is the biggest brand in terms of a coach. Texas, I think you could argue, is the biggest brand anywhere. I think you could argue that more people tune in to see Texas win if you're a Texas fan and to see Texas lose if you're not a Texas fan than anybody. So again, the fact that we're talking about Colorado and Nebraska essentially being neck and neck with Alabama, Texas, it is just unbelievable. And what it speaks to me is exactly what I said to lead the segment. The impact that Coach Prime is having on college football is just astronomical. And I'm a guy, if you have followed this YouTube channel, you know that since day one, hour one, minute one, I have been on Team Coach Prime. I watched the documentaries when he was at Jackson State, first by Barstool Sports, then by ESPN. I knew the impact that he could have in recruiting, and I always thought he would win pretty successfully right away. Now, did I predict 2-0 out of the gate, a win over the reigning national champs? I can't say that I did. But even as good as I thought Coach Prime would be, I couldn't have imagined this. Highest rated Pac-12 game ever in week 2, just the second game. We're not talking about them surprising everybody and playing for a Pac-12 title. We're not even talking about week 5 where they're playing USC, and what if they're both undefeated? What if they're both? It's unbelievable. And what I would say is this thing ain't slowing down anytime soon, okay? First of all, I thought it was very interesting. ESPN announced its week 4 broadcast windows. First of all, week 3, all you need to know, College Game Day and Big Noon Kickoff are both going to Colorado, both going to Boulder for their pregame shows. By the way, the game doesn't even kick off till 10, but they're going to be there 12 hours earlier because they want that experience of Coach Prime and everything that he has done for Colorado. But beyond that, I also thought it was interesting. You want to know the impact of Coach Prime? How about this? The week 4 TV schedule is out. Next week, September 23rd, is a loaded TV slate. Colorado is playing at Oregon. Colorado at Oregon is essentially in ESPN's biggest window, ESPN ABC's biggest window that week as well. You want to know how big the impact of Coach Prime is? Florida State, Clemson. Florida State, Clemson. Florida State is a mega brand in its own right. Clemson has won 2 national championships in the last decade. They got bumped to noon Eastern time because of putting Colorado in the 3:30 Eastern window. And by the way, the only reason Colorado isn't in that 7:30 Eastern window is because that night Ohio State plays at Notre Dame. And I think bluntly, I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but I think ESPN is just basically punting on putting a big game in that time slot. They don't want to go head to head with Ohio State and Notre Dame. So it is an incredible testament. I don't think it's slowing down. Remember, the week after Colorado plays Oregon, they host USC at home. I can imagine the networks are fighting tooth and nail to get that game, whether it be another big noon kickoff at 10 a.m. local time in Boulder, or whether it would be a late night ESPN, whatever game. I guarantee they're fighting over it. And what I would say is, like I said, it isn't going to slow down anytime soon. Marquee games all year, marquee players in Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter. And I don't think it's going to slow down going forward either. I've said it in a lot of other things that I've done talking about Coach Prime in Colorado. This is probably right now the least talented team that he will ever have at Colorado. And that's not a knock on this team. It's just he's only been there 8-9 months. Give him another year with proof of concept to go out on the road recruiting, to go into the transfer portal, and let's see what kind of caliber of player. Again, it's no disrespect to the players on this roster, but he's going to get even a different caliber of player in the portal that he couldn't get. And I know he signed 5 stars in the past, but I think the quality across the board of his high school recruiting classes is going to improve as well. So it's an incredible testament, and it speaks to what I said. I thought I knew the impact of Coach Prime. I think I stand corrected.